Welcome, everybody. Delighted to have the executive director of the Sound Money Defense League. If ever there was something that needed defending, I would say it is Sound Money. Delighted to have JP Cortez with us today. JP, welcome.
Francis, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
And having watched some of your content and wanting to get your name out there to our viewers, that they're real good people doing excellent work, and the specific silo or the niche, the micro niche that you're really drilling deep on, because there's a lot of us generalists. We want sound money, we recognize gold cannot be proliferated, all these good things, the general gold bug. But you're taking this further and you're making it hard for the politicians to ignore. Let's talk the legislative aspects and your activities in terms of sound money.
Absolutely. So the Sound Money Defense League, it's a project of Money Metals Exchange that was started in 2014. And we're a nonpartisan legislative policy group that goes states to state in the United States and to Washington, D.C., remonetizing gold and silver. We looked closely at the state of play, and what we found was that there are a ton of laws currently dissuading you from being able to use gold and silver as money. The largest reason that gold and silver can't be used as money today is not because they're not good money, but because the government has saddled all of the good potential alternatives with taxes and regulations and disincentives to being used. So we go state to state, removing the brush and the briar that keeps people from transacting in gold and silver, all of the things that are introducing friction to these transactions. Like you mentioned, there's been a ton to talk about since 2014. Now we're approaching 24 states that have passed legislation like this. Last year was our most successful year of our history, where more than 65 pieces of legislation were introduced in more than 27 states. That means more than 50% of the United States was actively considering pro-gold and silver legislation. So that is a huge changing point. It's a huge turnaround from the last several decades that have been based in debt and credit and printing money that has led to where we are today. And so the answer has to be to restore gold and silver. And there are a lot of people talking about how that could be done. And we're doing it through legislation, through policy.
Fantastic. And one of the ways, I think you mentioned, there's an inherent inertia to politicians, aren't there? They're quite happy pulling salary and not getting too much. And getting those phones to squeak with politicians that don't want to look at your bills or sidebarring you, putting on the slow road, hoping you'll wither on the vine and go away. There's no money in it necessarily for them. Some of them, you've got some pretty handy techniques of getting them. And would it be suffice to say that saying that some of the best minds of business are sound money friendly, and that those states that are lagging will be the ones that will see the migration of some of their best minds to those that are leading? How would you characterize that, and tell us a little bit more about how you're bringing pressure to bear to get the recognition you deserve and the legislature to entrench the value of silver and money as sound money?
I think that's an absolutely fair characterization. And I think that, like you mentioned, one of the most important tools that we have in this fight for sound money is grassroots pressure. Again, because of our partnership with Money Metals, we have access to this customer list of people that are motivated to act on issues pertaining to gold and silver, that are willing to act as customers, as people directly affected by these policies. And the thing is, in U.S. capitals of states, these are not like Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., you can call, you might get an answer from an aide, you might leave a message, that message might eventually make it to the congressman, you might receive a form response back. But the truth is, you have very little power and very little voice in Washington, D.C. But in the case of your state capitals, that is, the opposite is true. You have an unbelievable amount of power because state legislatures aren't used to receiving that kind of pressure. Organized movements in support of something is not something they're used to seeing at the state level. So if you can get even 15, 20 phone calls, 20 emails to these legislators, lawmakers, telling them this is why this bill is important and I urge you to support it, that is worth its weight in gold on the state level. So it's so important. I encourage anyone listening to this to realize that you have the power to be an active participant in your state legislature. you still have that power and that voice. So I encourage everyone to use it, especially as it's pertaining to sound money here, which is what our focus is on. Because the truth is, and it begins in such simple of ways. Sales tax, for example. There are states here in the United States that still charge sales tax when you purchase gold and silver. If you walked into a grocery store or a gas station today and you asked them to exchange a $1 bill for 4 quarters and they charged you tax on that transaction, you would say they're crazy. This is simply one exchange of one form of money for another. Exactly. Yeah. But in a couple of jurisdictions here in the United States, they'll still charge you a sales tax, 5, 6, 7% for making this exchange. So going state to state and arguing that this is constitutionally not permitted, it's not an efficient form of tax revenue collection, conventions, dealers, the industry is avoiding these states. There are questions of tax parity, of course. You know, if I were a wealthy person of means and I wanted to invest in gold in any of those jurisdictions, I would open up my phone, I would go to my E-Trade app, and I would invest using tax-advantaged ways that are electronic, that don't carry this sales tax. But people of median means, people of lower means, who don't necessarily understand Roth IRAs or what required distributions are, but that do understand what gold and silver are going to their coin dealer, dollar cost averaging Silver Eagles or Silver Rounds every paycheck. And those people are being penalized with taxes by the state for choosing to invest their money in something that is a proven inflation hedge. So going just that one issue, which fortunately I'm happy to say that is mostly over now. 45 states in the country have ended this, so 45 out of 50. So this tax is almost extinct, but that's just one example of a tax that states and municipalities are still imposing on people who invest in gold and silver. It's like they don't want you using gold and silver. They don't want you using anything other than the Federal Reserve note.
They don't want you upgrading your money from fiat paper derivatives to the real deal, do they? They want you in the derivative system of proliferation and proxy rather than the sound money system, which is, of course, what you're all about. And by the way,
of course, Francis, you can see why. Why wouldn't they? By moving away from sound money, they've been able to fight endless wars across the world. They've been able to grow a giant bureaucracy of government employees. At this point, the government, federal and state system is largely a jobs program for adults. This is not an efficient sector. But by moving away from sound money, by gold and silver, and towards the printing press, the government can act at will without any concern for its people or the consent of its people. So, of course, it makes a lot of sense for a government that wants to wage wars, for a government that wants to tax and steal from its people, from a government that wants to continue these giant entitlement Ponzi schemes that is retirement programs here in the United States. All of this is possible. All of this deceit and conceit is possible because of the original deceit, which is money, the fraudulent money that we're all legally forced to use.
Love that. Love that a great deal. And I want to make a message that this is not really a question directed to you, but almost a statement for all that will be watching this video. Dear bullion dealer friends, from ITM Trading, ST Bullion, Palisades Radio, my minor friends, here right now is somebody actively doing something about getting sound money on the board. And to all those investors that use those various different bullion dealers and others I haven't had time to mention, here is somebody that should be on a mail list going out to all you buyers of silver and gold. And when he calls to arms you in your state because of some repugnant politician who is showing great inertia towards allowing sound money come, I would like you all to respond in kind with both an email, a telephone call, and let the pressure be applied, because the gatekeepers aren't there to the same degree. The need to be seen to look after local politics is far more sensitized than that one of the national element, and you will get real outcome. And I've always said, don't participate in systems that you aren't likely to get meaningful outcome. It's an exercise of futility and mass psychosis. However, this is not one of those, and you will get herd, and it's a grass up initiative. It's a bottom up, because you aren't winning with the current top. Although I'm now going to addend, I think you're about to have your best year on account of the momentum you've established, given the current bend of politics and the view towards statism, the need to establish Ukraine war peace on account of unaffordability. Let's not put it all down to peace and love. Some of it is pragmatic, I'm afraid to say. The expenditure can't be made. America is in a situation that it has $9 trillion of rollover. Regardless of what the interest rates is, you're going to have an escalating interest rate bill. You need to rein that back in. Even if we have a recession and a lot of cuts in the rates, you're going to have a huge additional payment on interest rates. It's time to not be wasting money. And I think the people that are part of that agenda, and forgive me for the slightly long-winded soapbox rant, are the right people that are now ready to hear that message. And it's time to point that out to the people in your local states in the US, that they are non-aligned if they are not embracing sound money, and the fact that the debt fiat system has allowed all sorts of fat, fraud, corruption, and wasty, fuzzy, fluffy jobs to be created that are non-productive and have been undermining your dollar. So I think congratulations for the momentum you've attained, but a future prediction for you is you're about to have your most significant year and the years that follow it during the way going forward. So I'm going to preemptively congratulate you for your positioning, your timing, and I look forward to seeing much more of the success. I don't know if you want to bolt anything onto the back of that.
Yeah, Francis, I think, what we're talking about here is a system that has enabled theft and fraud and normalized it. So much so that many people don't even realize it's happening. So to have people now understand in a way that they haven't before, these conversations are becoming more ubiquitous than they were in the past. Inflation is no longer something that people can hide. For a long time now, the government has been scapegoating one after the next. First, denying, of course. At first, there was no inflation, and then it was transitory, of course. The transitory era, and then, of course, it was the Russian oligarchs' fault that things are more expensive in your grocery store, and then the CEO of your grocery store, and then supply chain issues, and so on and so forth. And it will be a continuous pivot until we get to the root of the issue, which is obviously that of money printing. It is an unsound monetary system, which is the cause of where we are entirely now. So to say that we are approaching victory or approaching something closer to sound money than we've ever been, I think is absolutely true. And I think we're seeing that on the state level. That's undeniably the case. When we began this in 2014, there was model legislation that I was going around state to state begging legislators to introduce, begging them to consider. The few that would even consider introducing legislation would largely be mocked by their peers about how the bill is unnecessary and it shouldn't be investing in things like gold. And all of these people, all of these legislators, but also state treasurers, state financiers, all of these people with backgrounds in economics and business, frankly, were derelict in the fiduciary responsibility that they had to their taxpayers and to their citizens. When gold was $1,300 an ounce, we were begging them, you should buy gold to protect your state, to bolster your taxpayer funds, your reserve funds, your pension funds. And many of them wouldn't consider this. And look now, most recently, just 2 weeks ago, the state of Wyoming enacted legislation establishing a $10 million gold reserve for the state. Just recently before that, Utah establishing a $180 million reserve fund in physical gold for the state.
Correct.
So what we're seeing now, states themselves, there's a lot of talk of de-dollarization, and we look at BRICS countries and we look at countries with adversarial relationships to the United States that are de-dollarizing. But if you look a little closer, you'll find that it's not just enemies of the United States. It's in some cases allies, in some cases literal neighbors of the United States. But if you look even closer, it's states themselves. States are de-dollarizing. The truth is that states themselves have largely, in some ways, become taxpayer-funded hedge funds that are relying on investments. Those returns, they're actively chasing returns to make ends meet for the state. We can, of course, talk about how that's a horrible idea and the state shouldn't be doing that. But the reality is that the state is investing in many times assets with negative real rates of return because of inflation. So do we want them investing in this dollar-denominated debt with negative real rates of return? Or do we want them investing in gold and silver? Do we want them investing in sound money to the extent that they should be making investments at all? So now
Jumping in there, I may, just to give you a half a second to grab some air. You have actually a dichotomy in certain states' conducts. It's worth mentioning some names. You have Texas that has very much embraced the sound money. I think it's one of your forerunners. I saw your map of those that are most, leaning towards sound money, the right to bear arms, the right to sound money, a hot state. And then maybe we have the likes of California that is supposedly paying. I saw in 2024, quarter three, Tesla, Elon Musk's business, received $738 million, essentially from the state of California through carbon credits, which is largely in a very discredited climate change narrative that is going on. Which state do you want to live in? The one that is bankrupting itself, paying one particular mono battery company that is actually using subsistence, virtual slave labor to dig cobalt out of the African mines to do it? Or do you want a state that is giving you back your freedom, right to bear arms, and sound money, and actually winning for it? Because it's no surprise to see that Tesla itself and Elon has moved from California to Austin. And of course, other people that follow the likes of Joe Rogan and other businesses are actually seeing the migration. And I would like to put that as a synopsis for states right here, right now in America. Listen to this man, or go the way of California, or go the way of Texas. There is literally a fork in the road, and it's time, and the time is now. What kind of state do you wish to be?
And California is an excellent example of a state that has gotten it completely backwards. Of course, you can look at, there are great examples, large companies, Elon, I think Oracle, some of those are Salesforce. Some of those companies talked about moving as well. And so obviously on a governance level, there's a lot of issues to be had with California. But as it even pertains to sound money, California has something that is called a threshold tax in California. What that means is that they have a tax that applies once you hit a certain dollar amount. So if you were to buy in California, that's $2,000. So if you were to buy $1,000 of gold in California or silver in California, they will tax you 7, 8, 9%, I believe. If you have an order of $2,100, they will not tax you. This is in a completely regressive tax that only taxes the smaller purchases, or the smallest making modest purchases among us are being taxed, while those making large purchases are not taxed. So California has it completely backwards, of course. So they charge sales tax when you buy the metal. They charge a state capital gains when you sell the metal. And then on the federal level, you're going to get hit with a capital gains tax as well. Triple taxation on gold and silver in California. And all of that so as to be able to continue.
Sorry, paper money to real money.
Exactly.
Inside the same category.
Exactly right. And it's all a shift, right? In the 70s, when the gold window was officially closed, and since then, it's been the experiment has gone exactly the way Austrian economists and free market economists said it would. Exploding deficits. Now we're at an inflationary period where there are people here in the United States that are having a really hard time affording housing and food and medicine. Sometimes I walk through these state legislatures, these giant capitals, which are castles essentially erected to state politicians, where you have homeless people on the street living on the same block as these giant state capitals that are lined with gold, and people in business suits talking about how they're doing right for the state. In many cases, they're not. They're actively harming the people that they purport to be helping. So more than anything, the government doesn't need to establish sound money. The government doesn't need to establish a gold standard or anything like that. It just needs to get the hell out of the way. It needs to let markets decide what the best money is. And using that market process, subject to market prices, ultimately the market will determine what the best money is. We have already found that that's gold and silver. This test has already taken place. But the government saw that and instead saddled gold and silver with taxes, with reporting requirements, with regulations, with onerous requirements on going to stores even. Francis, here in the United States, there are states where you can go into a coin store to sell them. For example, if you have a Silver Eagle, you want to sell them your Silver Eagle in exchange for $35 or whatever it is, they'll sell it to you. But they will write down your name. They'll write down your address, your phone number. They'll write down a description of you physically, any features you have, any tattoos, any scars, glasses, hair color, eye color, any notable distinctive features. They'll take all that information, and then every day at the end of the day, they're legally required to upload it to a police database where the police can use that information for God knows what. Who knows how long that information sits there? And listen, if you're going to a pawn shop and selling grandma's brooch or her old earrings or necklace, yes, that should be reported, and that can be discovered. But precious metals are largely fungible. One Silver Eagle looks like another Silver Eagle. One gold bar, an ounce of gold, looks like an ounce of gold. That's a feature of gold. So to require businesses to report all of this information, and then in many cases force them to retain it. So this Silver Eagle that you just sold me, I'm not allowed to sell it. I have to tie it up in my inventory for months so that police, if they need to, can come in and find the stolen good. But this it's such an onerous obligation on dealers that makes it difficult for the industry itself to even survive. So on an industry level, on an individual level,
it's actually another tax, because the way the business is forced to respond is they're going to have to stick it in the back that it's not immediately money. They can't earn a return on it. So the price they pay will be less, and essentially the desirability is less, and all of it is spoiling normal business flow and activity. And as you say, get out the way. Flow is what we want. We don't want obstruction. And obstruction that sees you actually materialize less is actually an inadvertent tax. But it's an obstructive tax that benefits no one, because not even the government gets the money for it. So it's the worst possible tax, because there's actually no one who gets the cash flow, not even the government, who's probably the worst handler of money in their work in the first season. Even they denied that. So it does feel like legalese as taxation as well. Which I find fascinating. I want to broaden this a tiny bit, and I want the people that are watching what you're doing to be inspired in other countries. Because if America sees other countries, we have great support: Australia, South Africa, United Kingdom. They'll make up almost half the channel, the rest of the English-speaking nations of the world. Who's your guy who's doing what JP is? And are you supporting him? And have you got your bullion dealers to be aware of him and include his work in their newsletters? And are you weaponizing on a bottom-up basis to do the same model that I'm very excited to see? Because a lot of my YouTubes have a sort of doomer vibe to them about the trajectory we're in. This is really positive, and this has real effect, and it will highlight who the obstructors and extractors are, California state, versus the enablers, Austin, Texas. Generally, I think it was Wyoming you mentioned. Who are your top states? Let's do a bit of naming and shaming, shall we? Who's your top three and who's your bottom three? JP, go ahead.
On the 2025 Sound Money Index, which is actually a scorecard that we publish every year that ranks all 50 states based on the policies, 13 indicators, determining which state has the best pro sound money environment and which state has the worst sound money environment. This year, the top three: Wyoming, South Dakota, and Alaska. These are states that have proactively ended taxes on gold and silver. They have generally low levels of taxation. In Wyoming's case, like I mentioned, it reaffirmed gold and silver as a legal tender. They established a gold reserve for the state. They're in talks about investing pension funds in gold, maybe even a gold depository for the state. So these are all states that have taken steps forward to enable and restore gold and silver. At the bottom, California, like you mentioned, Maine, and Vermont. These are states that have not passed sound money legislation. These are states with high rates of taxation. These are states with onerous policies on dealers. These are states that have not done any gold bonds. So there are all of these criteria that we use to rank these states. And these states, like you mentioned, Texas is towards the top as well. Idaho, another state towards the top. So there's a lot of promise here on the sound money, in the sound money movement. Like I mentioned, I've been doing this now 10 years, and when this began, there were not states actively doing this. And today, that is not the case. Today, I'm getting phone calls saying, hey, I introduced this bill. Now what? I saw that you did this in another state. I wanted to bring it to our state. So legislators, lawmakers themselves are doing it now individually, separate from our direct efforts. And I think internationally, how this pertains is this creates a model. To remove taxes on it, to remove friction is the first important thing. And then you can go into the state owning it, and the state can then decide how best to store it, how best to audit it. All of the regulations, the securities, the checks in place that are required to maintain a gold stockpile. On that same topic, the United States is having to answer that question itself with the conversation of the gold audit. This is a topic I'm sure you've seen, Francis.
About Fort Knox. Talk to us your take, what you will see. My favorite president that never was Ron Paul, probably the only person that would have ever brought me off the sidelines, was a man ahead of his time and was talking about a lot of the things that are now being enforced that he would have done before it was forced, which would have cost you a whole bunch less, but better late than never. I fear that being too late can still lead to crisis and contagion. But even still, if you're finding sound money and bringing it back, you bring it. Where's your stand on the audit and the Fort Knox situation?
Well, I think first, my stand on Ron Paul is obviously that he's an American hero. My, as well, best president of our lifetime that unfortunately never was. He inspired much of the work that I do. In high school and college, that's how I came up. I was fortunate to be interviewed by him recently on his show. He is a supporter, a proponent of what we're doing, and so much of what we're doing is inspired by him. On the Fort Knox stuff, this is another really interesting issue that Ron Paul is directly affected by. In the 90s, Ron Paul introduced legislation in Congress that called for an audit of Fort Knox. As you may know, this bill went absolutely nowhere. There is no political will to audit Fort Knox or audit the Federal Reserve or do any level of introspection or internal audit at all, really. But so the bill didn't go anywhere. And in 2019 or in 2018, we started working with Congressman Alex Mooney. He was a U.S. representative in West Virginia to introduce the Gold Reserve Transparency Act. We worked with him on this language in 2019. This called for an audit of America's gold in all of the places where America's gold could be stored. It's not just Fort Knox. There's gold in New York. There's gold in Denver. All of the gold has to be audited, not just what's in Fort Knox. As well, not just the audit. Of course, a physical inventory to make sure it's all there is important. And assaying all of it and ensuring that it's not titanium plated or titanium with middle or any fraudulent bars in any way.
And the hypothecation. This is going to be the difference. I mean, if you put on a great road show and you have Elon running up and down aisles of yellow gold, I don't know who that belongs to, really. I don't know who's the name on the clipboard as well. It's going to be a very hard thing to satisfy in truth, but any efforts therein would still be appreciated. What's your take on how do you deliver? I mean, let me give you a chance to breathe, but I kind of had this fantasy, were I managing China, how would I maintain? Or America, I suppose it could be, but wanting to establish sound money. I actually thought of them having this amazing glass, quadruple thick glass vault that all the citizens could actually see, and you would have multiple layers and everybody could see, and that there would be a permanent robot and people could drop a dime or whatever the equivalent in yuan, or let's say we're talking America, and you could select a gold bar by location, almost like battleships, row number, and the robot arm would go and get it, and you'd have an auto scanning device, and it would be put on, it would be put through, and you could make a road show of it. Essentially, there's all this. It's kind of like the toy that picks out the claw.
The claw
That picks out the rabbit bunny, and you could actually have that particular one that'll confirm when last was it scanned, how what was the finding at that time, blah 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 blah, and it gets put through the X-ray scanner. The scanner kicks out. Look, it still could be crooked if you are hell bent on doing it, but people could actually see that. that bar was scanned on that date. That was the finding, and you could see it, and it could be held up to where the person, have 6 or 7 ports, or maybe 30, I don't know, where people can put in coin, and the bar will be shown real close up, and it's the nation's wealth. And in its essence, you turn it in, this is your wealth, and you're free to audit it all day long, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you turn it into a feature, what's actually a bugbear. But the only nation that would be prepared to do that is someone who had the gold, and that it was unhypothecated and could set up this entire roadshow. And anytime you wanted to come to the capital, assessing the real wealth of the nation is something you could show your children in as a principle, and you could choose that. Imagine if you just reframed the whole process and you gamified, and actually you made coins on it. It paid for the service, you charged for it, and everybody could see when lost and could choose a bar, and the arm would do what it does and scan, etc. I think it would be great, and you could a bit of lights, a bit of razzmatazz. I mean, the coin can go down, make fun of this at that.
Yeah.
And ka-ching, and that coin is pure nickel, or whatever it was, and then it say this is now paid for, and have turn it a laser beam show if you must, but just make it fun and make people engaged, and actually take something that's been dark and murky and make it front and center gamification. And actually, nobody does showbiz like America does showbiz. At the end of the day, it's your natural calling. You should. I should be IPing this, but imagine if you could have that and the legitimacy of that, and you could even rotate the machines that are doing the scanning, etc., and people could certify them and engineer, this is a very 100% accurate 4 nines machine. It always calls it out. Put a fake bar through, show it. You could put a museum type vibe, which has a lot of glass that everyone can see the people and all the little things moving around. I just think there's an opportunity in that, giving the people confidence in the money system again.
I think that is an incredible allegory for what the money is today, right? Like you mentioned, nothing like that would happen today. And in fact, whatever is inside of Fort Knox is shrouded in mystery. There is no transparency. There is certainly no participation or any way for an American citizen or anyone to audit America's gold. So yeah, to create a system in which taxpayers can take ownership for this reserve because they know that it's sound money. They know that that money will be worth something in the future, and they can plan 10, 50, 100 years ahead. The psychology of doing that would be huge. It would be a huge change away from what we're experiencing today, which is a loss of confidence in the US dollar, in the US government in some cases. And the hypothecation is such a big part of why this mystery remains. One of the improvements that we made from Congressman Paul's bill is to call for a full accounting of all gold transactions involving America's gold for the last many years, right? Because the gold can be in the vault, and I think probably most of it is there. There is a question about the purity of the bars. These are largely coin bars. They're 90 to 92% pure. They do not meet global market standards. They are not liquid. So that is an issue. But if I personally had to guess, I think most of the gold might be there. But the bigger issue, of course, is who owns it. Was it swapped? Was it leased? Was it pledged? Was it hypothecated or encumbered in some way? Is it China? Is it the Vatican? Is it Germany? Was it de Gaulle? Who owns the gold? To the extent that it's there, who actually has claim to the gold? And that is a huge question. So the Gold Reserve Transparency Act, it addresses that. It calls for a full accounting of the measure. And I think any incoming or future legislation, federal legislation on this, should also include refinement, a process to refine America's gold so that it could be used in the case that it had to be. Because right now, those bars are great paperweights. They're not globally liquid. So, in the 70s, and even most recently with Descent here, they're doing this made for TV Hollywood showing where you can go in and there's a pre-approved container, and they'll open that and they'll show you one of the bars. But that's not an audit. There is no serial number matching. There is no assay happening. There is no weighing of the bars. That's not what an assay is. And I worry that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are talking about, let's do a live walkthrough through Fort Knox. This is just theatrics. That's more theatrics, and that's not what's needed here. It is so important that even the people that are shining the light on this, that is being Elon Musk has talked about it, President Trump has talked about it, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, these people have to make sure that they are not distracted, because even Bassett, even Governor Trump's own people are saying, I was there, I know the gold is there, I saw the walls. But that's not what an audit is. And an audit is ongoing. Where I'm not talking about auditing the seals of the box. I'm talking about auditing the actual metal that's supposedly inside the box. There have been so many questions regarding the status of America's gold, the movement of America's gold, when the last time it actually got a legitimate and credible audit. So legislation like this would be huge. And, if the vault doors open and the gold isn't there, that would be catastrophic. It would be the worst.
Well, they wouldn't open them if they weren't there. If they did get something there. I will point out there's been immense amount of physical movement. So they quite possibly weren't there, and things are being put in place for a bit of a road show. But it's almost inevitable that an insufficiently robust audit or unveiling will transpire, meant to allay all fears. And I can't see it being done in a manner that would satisfy you or I, because that would be the end of the derivative system. The proxy and derivative system and sound money is actually at a governmental national level, not what any government wants. They like to keep us on the wrong end of a compound interest equation. Central bankers' policy is inflation, which means fiat proliferation, which is how they have the power they have over us. They keep us monkeys on greased poles. So I don't want to be a doomer on that point, but nonetheless, what you are doing, at least at a state level, will still prove worthwhile, even in lieu of my worst suspicions in terms of anything that's a bit razzmatazz, smoke and mirrors in terms of the larger audit. And as you say, it's not just Fort Knox. I mean, I know there was gold in the old towers surrounding the 9/11 as well. Where did that get moved? Where is it? The JP Morgan vaults, etc., etc. So I think it needs to be holistic, but I don't think we're going to get what we want entirely on that because they need us on a derivative system. It would impose too much discipline. But I think having you push for that, nonetheless, locally, will at least allow those that want a parallel run in a physical system not be unduly prejudiced against for not accepting the fullness of the derivative system that will no doubt still continue, possibly more in a CBDC tokenized, digitized version over the paper fiat version. And I'm hoping for us to maintain that because then we can participate in it more freely and the acceptance of it. So talk to us about maybe how could I exist post a reset collapse of debt, which is almost mathematical certainty coming in spite of everything. Will we be able to transact? Because if I can have my silver coins, my mass wealth in a bar of gold and some bigger coins in gold, but then silver bars and then actual daily transaction, or silver was the people's money. Could we get back to where that's accepted and there's some trade in it?
I think that the biggest thing is going to be readopting your own gold standard, taking initiative and having individuals stack themselves, understanding what money is, which is this is an IOU, this is a dead piece of paper that has no real value, carries mass counterparty risk. Gold and silver are not. That is not the property traits they have. And the thing about legal tender, which is kind of a funny, like very academic topic, but the reality is that legal tender is a legal designation that you only use if your money doesn't already have monetary properties.
Inherent value.
Exactly. I don't need to make gold and silver legal tender because they are legal tender. People are using them as money. On the other hand, if I wanted to swindle everyone out of their gold, if I wanted to steal their gold and force them into a debt-based system that I could control, what I would do is print a bunch of pieces of paper and I would use the law. Yeah. I would use the wand of legality.
Yeah. Yes. And that seashells and say, by decree, this is money.
Yeah. And governments have been doing this for time immemorial, right? I think Marco Polo, go back to the original days of the first found legal tender laws. So the governments for sure will continue to push you into this system. To be sure, the gold standard did not fail. It was killed by dishonest politicians. It's not that gold is not good as money. It's that they don't want you using their They don't want you using a money that isn't inflatable, that can't be controlled. So this is all part of a greater system. And so I think a big part of it, to the extent that you are investing in physical metal, I think that, using it to barter, like you mentioned, small fractional pieces, innovation in sound money. I think that what we talk about on the policy side, and to remove all of the friction, allows and enables entrepreneurs to innovate within this space. Money is a space that has not been innovated much within, in large part because of the monopoly that the government has had on money. F.A. Hayek, Nobel Prize winning economist, said that money was captured in its infancy. It was captured by government in a monopoly form and then frozen. And for so long, we had been unable, not allowed, to even imagine what a good money could look like. We're not allowed, whereas any other thing in the world, we look at its properties and we say, would this make a good X? For example, if I were looking at an umbrella and I said, this piece of paper could function as an umbrella, would this make a good umbrella? You could use it as an umbrella, but it does not function well as an umbrella. And there are other items, other things that are naturally born to function better as an umbrella. For example, an umbrella. Gold and silver are the same way. To the extent that it's a good, you can do it well and you can do it very poorly. So there are items, goods that are commodities that can be used as gold and silver, that can be used as money and can function as money. And there are varying degrees of success or viability to each item used as money. Paper money like this, what we're seeing, is non-viable. It's not sustainable. And the survival rate for paper money is zero. Every single paper money in the history of the world has eventually died.
The swindlers have already taken over and swindled. The temptation is too large.
Because it's one of the greatest powers that man has ever sought. Being able to control the value of currency, of money, is alchemy. It's to create something out of nothing. And governments have sought that power since the beginning of time. And they will continue to do so. So the important thing, I think, is adopting your own gold standard, your own silver standard, making sure that you're there in the fractional side to be able to transact or barter if you need to. Looking at, if you wanted to, there are digital versions of these things. Asset-backed digital currencies where your gold or your metal is sitting in a vault somewhere and you have a card that you could use. I think that companies like that and items like that in general, you're going against economic law by doing this, by pursuing this use case. No one wants, or in my opinion, people don't want to sell their gold and silver right now. Not if I can use depreciating Federal Reserve notes. But as long as this infrastructure exists and these rails exist, people can use them then in the case of needing to, right? So everything, and then of course, even like Goldbacks, for example, items that are physical in nature, but have gold inlaid in them so as to create a bill. I don't know if you're familiar with these items, but do you have one? Do you? Yeah. Exactly. And look, this is innovation in money that we're seeing right here. The psychology of money, at least for Americans and probably worldwide, has been that money is the green paper you carry around in your wallet. And that is the conception of money across humanity in many places today. But to reestablish or to reconnect an actual gold connection to the bills that you're carrying in your wallet would change the mentality, the zeitgeist of an entire culture. It could change. So these are the kind of innovations that we're seeing in money that will make it easier for people to transact near and far, and that in many cases carries a message too. This is a learning or educational opportunity for you to hand a gold back to someone and have that conversation about what money is, where it comes from, where it derives its value, what makes good money. All of these are questions that are being asked today with frequency that they haven't been asked over the last decades.
Can I just come in on that? You prompted me to get my Nevada Goldbacks out. And of course, the 50 Nevada Goldback is a fatter note. You can feel it's a thicker note. Since I bought these and I haven't been spending them because they're good money to me, I prefer to spend the poorer money, which is the law of the in terms of utility, you get rid of the bad money first. These, and I can't quite recall what I paid for them, but you pay a small amount over spot. We have a gent in Panama that made these available to me, and a couple of us have purchased them. But since I purchased them, the gold is up about 60%. So these particular notes right here that I'm just keeping a sample of the different size and annotations in this wallet are actually buying me more goods today than what I paid for them about 2 years ago. And in the last year alone, we've done 50%. From when I got them, I think it's maybe 2.5 years, they've actually gone up. So they've turned in, instead of being cash, they've actually turned into investment and cash.
Exactly.
And in actual fact, what I just showed you is the best performing non-fiat compared to the Swiss franc, compared to the Singapore dollar, and compared to the dollar itself. This is an outperformer that is buying me 50% more goods as a result of it. And I'll give a shout out to the Goldbacks, Nevada Goldbacks, to give them a punt. But you're not going to want to spend them. You're going to get rid of all the paper you're given first, because those are actually going down in bad buying power immensely as you are facing the inflation. So keep trading out of the paper ones for the gold ones. And here's how we create the movement. We need everybody to keep dumping the bad derivative money and taking the other side of the trade. And that is why you're finding gold at 3,000. That is why you're actually finding the debt markets corrected 50%. The funding system for overspending in America is over. It's being withdrawn. The bottomless overdraft is now getting a number put to it, and it's not infinity anymore. And what happens is the assets of debt is there's no new buyers who wants it. So as a result, what was acting as a 40-year bull market reserve asset has now lost its reserve asset status due to excessive proliferation, insufficient yield, and capital losses that saw it go from a stable asset class to losing 50% in 3 years. It was supposed to be the low beta, low volatility, to your alpha in your stock market, the 40-60 portfolio. But everybody forgets that gold used to be a part of that portfolio and was eliminated in the financialization of everything. So with that knowledge, everyone should be buying Nevada Goldbacks. And even if there's a small premium, which I seem to remember paying at the time, you'll quickly make that back and have the best fiat and real gold in there for it. So, yep, thank you for bringing that point to attention, and let me take advantage of actually showing some gold-backed currency.
Exactly right. And I think another point you just made that I find really interesting, and to keep going back to the psychology of it, I think what you just did there, it is true that gold is up to $3,000 when priced in dollars. But if you're able to pivot for a second and not price things in dollars, you'll find that in the case, especially as it pertains to what I do, which is, so for example, the capital gains tax. When someone buys an ounce of gold at $2,000, they sell it at $3,000. They're charged $1,000 on that gain. But that gain is a phantom gain. It's only a nominal gain. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold, but it requires more of the same unit of devaluing dollars to buy that same ounce of gold. It's not that gold became 50% more valuable. It's that the dollar became 50% less valuable. The dollar is dying. We're devalued. And when priced in houses, when priced in groceries, when priced in gold, the dollar it's a moribund currency on its way down. And so that's why, to go back to things like Fort Knox and efforts like we've seen in the United States recently to address things like waste and fraud and abuse, public trust is, at a time we're seeing where, again, adversaries of the United States are actively talking about creating currencies that they can settle, the final settlement currencies, to move away from the dollar. This de-dollarization thing is not something that's happening in a fantasy land. It's actually happening. America's competitors are actively seeking this outlet. And to be sure, that is because America and other parts of the world have perverted the power that comes with being the global reserve currency through sanctions, through seizure of assets, through kicking people out of international payment systems. All of these things is the government placing its thumb on the scale here. So to for example, audit Fort Knox and find that there is gold, would be to restore trust in a system that was once the greatest economy in the world, that was once the greatest monetary unit in the world, that moved away from austerity, that moved away from sound money, that moved away from low taxes, and became what it is today. And the country can continue down this course, and it will die if it does, like the many other countries and empires that came before it. But now is the chance, the opportunity to pivot away back to the principles that made America great the first time, that saw industrialization, that saw an economic boom unlike the world had ever seen. We have an opportunity to restore that, to restore sound money in the political system, in the monetary system. And it starts with the individual. Like you said, it's the individual that has to act. That's the Mises, who is the Austrian economist. All of it stems in human action. It requires humans that know and understand sound money to take a stand against MMTers, against money printers, against people who believe that money is a government good that is, passed down to us by a benevolent government. That's not the case.
Yeah. And on that point, I often, because I'm a preacher, I'm a Manic Street preacher of this. I can't shut my mouth. I'm not in this space because I'm being paid by anyone to be in this space. I'm in it because I'm passionate about it. And I was we were walking, we have a lovely mountain and we were trail walking, and I've been filling my poor mate's head with all of this. And he was saying, and he was asking the question, while we were walking, we're climbing quite high, and I was huffing and puffing. My walking fitness was worse than his, taking his dog up the mountain. And he was saying, but when I buy all this gold and silver, like, nobody takes it, in lieu of payment. And I said, I'll take it. I'll take it, and I'll give you whatever shit money happens to be the shit money of the day for it. Whatever you're buying, whatever you end up wanting to buy, I'll take it. And you know what? Smart people, similarly like me, they'll take it off you too, because everybody knows when there's good money in the house. So to all those sitting here saying, but, I won't be able to transact. When last did you go with your silver dime and buy, 3 liters of milk and the store won't take it? Come past my house on the way. I'll give you a premium. Because our premium for your silver coin and give you as much of the crap money of the day that you want, that you'll buy, you can take down to the store if they're stupid enough not to take your better money. And we as people that offer services must give opportunity. It's not just we buy up and have the sound money ourselves. For those of us offering services, the plumber that's watching this, the woodman, the carpenter, the baker, the candlestick maker, you small business operator, tell your clients you will take silver and gold in currency for a purchase, because it's unspied on, it's undata monitored, it's not a digit in the bank account that spies on you for the Reserve Bank of your country. It is true liberty, freedom money. Tell everyone you deal with, when you are preaching like I preach, I'll take your money in silver and gold. There's very simple mechanisms that you can do ping tests to make sure you're getting something clean. If you start taking a lot of it, you can x-ray it. There's many things, but you can start taking small amounts anyway. And those people will start to realize you want it, because we also have to show it's utilitarian in trade value and that we value it above fiat. And I'm telling you, I do. If someone wants to join our program or any of our services that will send us bullion from one of our recognized bullion dealers direct, I'll almost give you a discount. It's the only way you'll get a discount out of me. Send me bullion. I'll have made it back in a year. I know I will, and some. Send me bullion. So that's the message I'd like you to add to your work as someone who's fully behind you and counseling you. Tell everyone to accept it as well as to buy it, because everybody's getting them as buy it, but then they sit there and say, what do I do with it?
That's actually this is a really interesting point that you're bringing up. And so like, to synthesize what we were talking earlier, there's economic law in companies that are trying to create systems that allow people to send gold and silver. People don't necessarily want to do that. But despite people not wanting to do that, I think that, when you look at central banks around the world, Francis is buying gold and silver like that. JP is buying gold and silver like this. But it's not just Francis and JP. It's not just these two crazy guys on the podcast. Russia's buying gold and silver. Turkey's buying gold and silver. China's buying gold and silver. All of these countries all over the world, some of the brightest financial minds in the world that have not been infected with a debt-based monetary system ideology or with an MMT ideology. All of these smart people, all these institutions, states, businesses, countries, international conglomerates, all of these people are waking up to the reality again that gold and silver are in fact money. And it's not that people are learning something that they hadn't known before. It's a remembering, pivoting back. We've moved away these last 50 years, 50 plus years of monetary alchemy. We're moving away from that now. And so to go back to what you were saying about, it's important not just to buy the metals, but to actually use them, to use them transactionally. In Tennessee, and I have long said, like I just said, one of the issues is no one wants to sell the metal unless there's incentive to do so. In Tennessee this year, legislation has been introduced that calls for a discount in price if you're buying with gold and silver. So, and they defined it as real money, but it creates an incentive for people to be able to spend their gold and silver. And why would you ever do that unless there was an incentive for you to do so? And that incentive is lower prices. Tennessee is actively trying to change the psychology to allow people, to encourage people, to entice people to transact using gold and silver as actual money. So on the policy level, we're changing this as well.
That's brilliant. And as I say, it's the only thing you can get a discount for out of me. And I might get more legs into promoting it and having it. And as I say, I'll be better off in due course anyway. Mm-hmm. And you'll have established a relationship with the dealer if you haven't already got one. And hopefully you'll be keeping some of your own as someone who's transacting with me. So I think we really want to get that utility element in there and the incentive as you've highlighted. And I think it's a win-win because in actual fact, they get a cheaper price at that point in time. They get reminded to buy bullion and engage and start a relationship or continue an existing relationship for doing that. And at the long run, actually, my buying power is going up by receipt of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Of course, and the discount is made back. And my corporation ends up with bigger holdings in fiat. And I think I'm going to investigate making that an option of onboarding going forward for Sound Money. And I think everyone else as a small business operator hearing me thinking about this and saying, there's more I still can do, you should be doing the same too. How about you offer 10% flat off the top on all your products if it went via your primary bullion dealer with a special code that said this is for delivery and sending to ABC Limited. And if you did that, I'm convinced that your clients would prefer to have the discount and will happily transact. And B, you're going to be wealthier in a year's time for having given the discount as opposed to taking the fiat. And I mean, I feel that. I absolutely feel that 100%. And I'd like to do more in that space. JP, it's been great talking to you. Please tell us any final thoughts before I give you an opportunity also to tell how people can get in touch with you.
Thank you, Francis, for having me on. It's great talking to you. I think you can find us. We find our website, soundmoneydefense.org. You can find me on Twitter or X at JPCortez27 or the Sound Money Defense League at SoundMoneyDef. I encourage everyone on our website is an email sign-up list. It encourages you to sign up with your email address and your zip code if you live here in the United States. The reason for that is because we send out action alerts based on your state. So if there is a hot sound money legislative battle unfolding in the state of Wisconsin, We send emails to our people in Wisconsin with contact information for key legislators, phone numbers, email addresses. In many cases, we even write pre-written messages that click here to send to all the legislators. You just have to click it and send it. We make it incredibly easy to be an active participant in your legislative battles, in these sound money battles. So I really encourage everyone to reminder again that you have a voice in these spaces, so please use it. And we encourage everyone to sign up for our list to stay abreast of the latest happenings in sound money legislation across the states and on the federal level.
I love your message. I am the most unengaged in the political process. I consider most activities pointless in terms of the left and right argument. I will, however, say absolutely I can see the effectiveness of this. It's bottom up. It's the right message. It's local. Let them feel the heat. It's sound money. It's noble. It's honest. Gold is truth. And politicians that aren't cooperating should be made to feel uncomfortable and feel the tide, and let it be known come local elections who was sympathetic and who was obstructive in this process. JP, I appreciate you for what you're doing, and I ask all the others watching, who is the JP Cortez of the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand? Maybe it is you. But as a final out of the blue question that in a sense is potentially, I don't want to say confrontational, but are you funded by anybody? Is there people that are behind sound money in terms of, who's backing you?
Absolutely. So the Sound Money Defense League is backed primarily by Money Metals Exchange. I think I mentioned them earlier. We work in collaboration with them. They're an online precious metals dealer, bullion mostly, not rare coins or collectibles. So they're an online dealer that funds this project. I'm also very fortunate to say that over the last 10 years, more now that the Sound Money Defense League has been around, we have been the recipient of many donations. These are small grassroots donations that are becoming ever more frequent. So individuals reaching out and supporting us with their hard-earned money, which we are incredibly grateful for. So fortunately, we have a team of a dealer and depository here backing us, but also I think people across the country are very appreciative of the work we've done, being able to change laws in their states. So our support from individuals donating is substantial as well.
So there's great people that like the idea of sound money, and there's a particular bullion dealer I'd like you to say one more time, and we'll put below that a good American could open an account and support someone who is already supporting a high integrity initiative. It's time we had much more of this. Please tell me the exchange again, please.
That is Money Metals Exchange. You can find them at moneymetals.com. I will say, just as a last thank you to them, there is no other bullion dealer that actively supports sound money like this, definitely not on the legislative policy side. Frankly, we've even asked other dealers to get involved during key races, and other dealers have actively avoided getting involved on this issue. Some people don't want to get involved on the policy side. For whatever reason, Money Metals is the only company willing to take a stand, willing to sell more than just widgets, that actually believe in sound money as a product, as an idea. So a huge thank to them, because we're not writing fundraising letters. We're not raising funds traditionally, because we can focus on our efforts on the actual policy, since we have this group that makes it part of their mission to fund this project. So a big thank you to them. And Francis, again, big thank you to you.
Yeah. Well, you know who's doing the good work there, guys, and make sure they get the reward for it. JP Cortez, thank you very much for coming on. Enjoyed talking to you. Keep up the good work. Please update us sometime in the future as well.
I hope to come back soon. Thank you for having me on, Francis.
Absolute pleasure. Bye for now.
Tired of profit wipeouts and blown accounts from following trade signal groups and other YouTube channels? Looking for a better way to trade, reduce your stress, and minimize your risk? Become a skilled technical analyst and see the charts and markets in a new light using the successfully proven HVF method by Francis Hunt, while being surrounded and supported by a principled, structured, and experienced community. Enjoy a constructive learning environment while practically trading markets, supported by a bespoke platform run through browser and app, specifically designed to teach and engage you whilst learning and growing as the markets move. This is not a Telegram or Slack signal group. All trade ideas are based on a proprietary technical analysis process honed over decades, which is the HVF method, leading to trade ideas with fast-moving breakouts and tight stops, exact entries and exits, nuanced interim considerations, and ultimately, strong rewards. Submissions are graded and scored by Francis for potential high-quality setups, and we provide bespoke tools to help get the job done properly and with precision. Over time and with focused effort, you'll begin to look at charts and price action just like Francis. Community updates every day by Francis and our 3 webinars a week provide a 360-degree approach, which are presented by our experienced team of trade leaders to spot potential trades. We're a community of self-actualized individuals, spanning the globe and active 24/7, 365. The premium community provides a warm, supportive, and cooperative place for people willing to listen, participate, contribute, and to learn. We've changed thousands of traders' lives. Transform your approach to trading now. Transform your life. Book an introductory call with us on the link below.